Hey, Pretty Girl Club. So today I want to talk about when the Black community feels entitled to you because I've seen this narrative happen with both Black men feeling entitled to MLS women and also with Black women feeling entitled to MLS men and women. So, one pattern that I've seen is, for example, I started the Exoticals United YouTube channel because I used to be in the Black women empowerment spaces. I was supporting them with my money, doing all kinds of things like trying to create a genuine sisterhood or whatever and like be friends with everyone. But then I got made fun of, and I noticed that anyone that was not an unambiguous dark skinned Black woman also got made fun of, and they got termed exotical. And so eventually people started telling me to get out of their spaces and create their own spaces. I even remember watching one of Chrissy's videos a couple of years ago where she was like, nobody's stopping light-skinned women from making their own spaces. They just didn't make their spaces. That's why they're flocking over here to my space, and this space isn't created for light-skinned women, blah 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 blah. And I was like, you know what, I respect that. That's right. If she created a space and spent years building it, and she invested her time and her money and her energy into that space, she has a right to invite whoever she wants to that space or tell people who are not a part of her audience to not be in that space. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to listen to what these other content creators are saying. I'm going to get out of their spaces and create my own space. So I made the Exoticals United community for mixed race women, women with admixture who identify heavily with the culture of their admixture, and also for women who are not unambiguous dark-skinned monoracial Black women. So let's say you just happen to look mixed race even though you are monoracial, but for whatever reason your admixture just really showed up in your phenotype. So maybe you came out with a lighter skin tone, maybe your hair texture is very loose, you came out with very light eyes, etc., and people are questioning you and kind of throwing you in and out of the Black community. That's who this space is for. But I've noticed that as this channel grows, I'm still seeing monoracial, unambiguous dark-skinned Black men and women still coming onto this channel attempting to kind of like usurp the conversations or say, oh, I'm an unambiguous dark-skinned Black man and like I've experienced the same thing. I'm an unambiguous dark-skinned Black woman and I've experienced the same thing. It's giving you're not special type of vibes. It's like they're trying to say like, oh, what you're going through is not a big deal because I've gone through it as well. Okay, well, I'm not trying to come onto this channel so I can invalidate monoracial dark-skinned Black people. All I'm trying to do is provide validation for the people who can relate to me. And so I just think it's funny how a lot of people in the monoracial, monocultural Black community in particular, they think they have this ownership over us. And how many of you guys have experienced that in your real life, like in your own family? People will try to use the one drop rule against you, and they'll try to say, oh, well, if you have one drop of Blackness, you're just Black, or they'll use the you're still an N-word talking point. But then if you say, hey, you're right, we're all Black, right? So let me go into the Black women empowerment spaces. Let me take all of the Black scholarships. Let me win all of the Black beauty pageants. Let me take all of the Black movie roles and get all of the Black opportunities. Then suddenly it's, oh, wait a minute. No, you don't represent an actual Black woman, Beyonce, because you don't look like the average Black woman, so that's not fair. You're benefiting from colorism, texturism, featureism, or mixed race privilege, Zendaya. So it's like they're doing this thing where they're going back and forth, and it's like once we actually create our own spaces and we are successful at it, it's funny how a lot of people from the communities where, they saw us as kind of being their work mules or kind of being like their beauty standard or whatever, once they mistreat us and say, hey, get out of here, you don't belong here, once we actually leave and then we're like, okay, we're going to create our own spaces, and then our spaces begin to become successful, then suddenly it's, oh no, wait a minute, actually, I can relate to everything you're saying here and I'm an unambiguous person. It's like, where was this energy before when you were stomping on us, calling us ramen noodle head ass bitches? Where was this energy before when you were saying we're going to age badly and that our type 3 hair textures are cursed? Where was that energy back then when we were supporting you? Where was this energy when Rosa Parks and Malcolm X and Barack Obama and other MLS people were upholding and uplifting the Black community? And then, you guys were turning around saying, well, you guys are only where you are because you're mixed. You guys only got where you are because of privilege and blah, blah, blah. And you shouldn't be in our spaces because you can't understand the plight of an unambiguous monoracial dark-skinned person. And I agree with that. I do agree that if you look different than an unambiguous dark skinned black person, then you're not going to have the same experiences. So all we did was we created a space where we can discuss our own experiences. And, we're kind of talking amongst ourselves. We're having so much fun over here in the Exoticals United community. A lot of you guys have been getting the Dark Femininity course. By the way, make sure to get that if you haven't gotten it already. A lot of you guys have been joining the Patreon, and we're having a good old time over here creating our own spaces. And then suddenly, people who used to be a part of the Black empowerment space, or people who are a part of like the Black manosphere or whatever, they're still trying to come over here and like follow us. So one thing I've actually noticed is how a lot of channels that are run by Black males, like unambiguous monoracial dark-skinned Black males, they tend to, like, if they're talking about relationships, I've noticed they tend to talk a lot about MLS women. Like, if you look at some of these channels that talk about celebrities hitting the wall or whatever, they're almost always talking about an MLS woman, almost always a mixed race woman, a quote unquote light skinned woman. They're always talking about us. And it's like, why aren't you guys focusing on unambiguous dark skinned monoracial Black women? And then it's like, same thing with some of the Black women empowerment content creators. Instead of actually focusing on empowering unambiguous Black women, they're focused on disempowering us over here in the Exoticals community. And it's so funny to me. And this just reminds me of how a lot of people on a subconscious level, they've always viewed us, quote unquote, more privileged people. They always viewed us as kind of like their ticket to success, or maybe their ticket to status or whatever, because the same people that say, you guys are mediocre, those are the same ones that often want to divest and create mixed race babies. Those are often the same ones that have crushes on MLS men, such as Chris Brown or the guy from Bridgerton or Michael Ealy or Hill Harper or whoever. And it's like, sis, you can't say that like I'm mediocre, but then you have a crush on my brother who has like my same features. You can't say that I am unattractive and then you find somebody attractive who has my exact same features. That doesn't make any sense. And have you guys ever noticed how when it comes to Black men in particular, let's say an unambiguous Black man wants to date a light-skinned woman. He's a colorist, right? But then if an unambiguous Black woman wants to date a light-skinned man, I've noticed nobody cares. Nobody says she's a colorist. It's only the men are colorists. I've noticed the women, they can't be colorists no matter what they do. They could literally call white men zaddies, and they can literally talk about bubblegum peen. They can call like Black guys trash bags or bullet bags or whatever, and like that's not colorist or racist. Has anyone ever noticed that? Like you're able to speak against every single group except for unambiguous dark-skinned Black women in particular. I have kind of noticed the same energy with unambiguous Black men, where it's like you're banned from speaking against them as well, with the way that they like demonetize certain channels or they try to delete certain channels or whatever. But it's funny how we just get thrown in and out of the Black community constantly. People will tell us, go create your own community, get out of our spaces, you're taking over our spaces or whatever, get out of these pro-Black spaces. And so we'll get out of those spaces, we'll create our own channels, our own Patreons, everything's our own finally. And then suddenly I get the same people coming over here and trying to like almost clout chase off of this community, or they're trying to come in and like argue back and forth with us, or argue back and forth about how we're mediocre and we're basic, and it's like nobody wants you, white men don't want you, you only attract dusty Black men. And it's like, aren't we all supposed to be focusing on ourselves? I thought we were all like creating our own communities and doing our own thing. And I just think it's funny how it's always the people who are on the sidelines, the people who haven't built anything for themselves, who are talking shit about the ones who are actually trying to create their own communities. And I just see so much hypocrisy when it comes to the whole colorism, texturism, featureism argument. Because, for example, let's say you're a mixed race person and you like to wear your hair in more of a sleek hairstyle with like your edges laid and stuff like that. People will call you a texturist. Like, I remember on Shira Seven's channel a while back when people were saying that she was a texturist because she was promoting kind of like straighter hairstyles and wigs that kind of had like a straighter texture or whatever, as opposed to like locks and braids. So people were calling her a texturist. Meanwhile, she's an actual mixed woman who actually has a type 3B hair texture. But suddenly it's not texturist if you have a 4C hair texture and you want your hair to look like a 3B, and then you simultaneously say that women who have a 3B hair texture are cursed. Like the girl who made that video about Brianna Monique. saying that her hair is cursed because it fell out when she was wearing it in braids. I just feel like there's so much hypocrisy here. Have you guys ever experienced this type of hypocrisy with people in your family or people in the black community where it's like they kick you out of the black community and then when you actually say, "Okay, that's fine, I'll leave. I'll only hang out with other mixed people. I'm only going to hang out with other light skins or other exoticals or whatever." And then suddenly like you're racist for doing that. So it's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Have you ever experienced this? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.